Hello, and welcome to the month of Spooky 2022. Scary stories are a part of life. We've been telling them since the dawn of man over campfires, radio broadcasts, television, and these days, social media. They remind us of our own mortality, get our adrenaline going, and send chills through our bodies that, well, we just can't explain. During this month, you can expect the unexpected, hear the unbelievable, and witness stories that will stretch your imagination. Why? Because that is what we do here at Ron's Amazing Stories. So settle in for the spooky and be prepared to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by week 2 of the month of Spooky.
Does that finally mean that we will have a spooky 5-minute mystery?
Well, no. But I do promise that it will be sketchy and make no sense.
Alrighty then.
In Shepherd's Hotel in Cairo, a smooth-skinned, fair-faced Englishman is speaking on the phone.
Detective Lindsay, this is James Middleton, room 517, Shepherd's Hotel. Can you come over right away? There's been a murder. Detective Lindsay, a murder. Please hurry.
James Middleton?
Yes, come in, Detective Lindsay. Glad you're here.
An Arab. Deader than a mackerel, too. Looks like he's been dead for several hours. Where's the corpse?
Benny Sauter, jewel merchant from Mecca.
Mecca, eh? When did you discover the body?
I was right here at the time of the murder.
Fine. An eyewitness right on the spot. Can you identify the murderer, Middleton?
I'm afraid this eyewitness isn't going to be much help. Unfortunately, I had my eyes closed.
You what?
I was out cold, unconscious for about 3 hours and a half.
That's tough, all right. Maybe you're lucky to be alive.
You're right, Inspector.
What brings you to Cairo, my friend, in the hottest season of the year?
I'm an engineer for the British.
When did you arrive in Cairo?
Yesterday. I registered yesterday morning.
I see. And you had arranged to meet Sauter here?
Yes, I wanted to buy some jewels while I was here. Rubies and diamonds to be set in a ring for my wife.
I see.
As we were looking at the jewels, someone knocked on the door. I opened it. There stood another Arab. He started toward the center of the room, then turned on me and struck a lightning blow. I went out like a light.
You have got a nasty bump, all right.
Sauter got what he deserved, that dirty double-crossing rat. Insisted on cash and plenty of it.
How much did you have?
The equivalent of 10,000 pounds in Arabian banknotes.
Quite a lot of money for you to be carrying around.
Yes, but I plan to spend it right away. Funny, isn't it, how naive we can be?
How do you mean?
It's obvious enough. Sauter needed an accomplice to rob me. But he didn't figure out that his greedy cutthroat friend would turn the tables on him, murder him, and make away with the jewels and money, too.
Middleton, you've suffered a great financial loss. But don't let it worry you. You can postpone that trip to the Suez indefinitely. Sorry to spoil your plans, but you're under arrest for the murder of Benny Sauter.
How did Detective Lindsay know that Middleton was the murderer? Do you know? In a moment, Detective Lindsay will tell you himself. But first...
How dead is a mackerel anyway?
Utterly dead, as a doorknob, or as dead as a haddock.
Haddock?
A silvery grey-bottom dwelling fish.
Pretty dead then.
Most assuredly.
Any ideas on this one, BG?
Well, I think that the Turkish people are a strange lot. I sense something cultural coming.
As do I. Perhaps it has to do with thievery in Mecca.
More likely, it will be something like Arabs only deal in rubies.
Oh, come on, BG. That's just dumb.
Not unlike yourself.
And now, back to our mystery.
Middleton, your alibi has beautiful logic up to a certain point. Like all criminals, in order to clear yourself, you go one step too far. Sauter was innocent. Your imaginary murderer was quite credible. But you didn't dare to stop there. The Arabs are a strange people. It may interest you to know about one of their strange customs. In the interior, people resort to barter. In the cities, British pounds, Turkish pounds, and Indian rupees are used. But since the time of the great Mohammed, the religious laws of the Mohammedans have prohibited the use of banknotes.
Well, that might be true in the 40s, but today the Turks use banknotes.
The Turkish currency is the lira.
Do you think that was ever true?
Doubtful. The Ottoman Empire adopted the lira in 1881.
So our guy is innocent.
Nonsense. He was a stone-cold killer.
How do you know?
Simple logic.
Is that all I get?
You can't handle the truth!
What's that you say?
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today we have an epic story sent in by ghost hunter Oliver Robertson. It should blow your mind. Also this week, we continue the month of spooky with a tale that has been called one of the scariest recorded during the golden age of radio. If you've not heard The House in Cypress Canyon, be prepared to have your mind blown for a second time. The twists and turns in this one are amazing. We are living payday to payday when it comes to your stories. We're barely making it, and I want to remind you that if you have a tale that you've wanted to share, now is the time to do it. Things have slowed down with submissions, and we really need to pick it up. Normally, this time of year, we spike just before the month of spooky. For whatever reason, that didn't happen this year. Your stories can be about anything and everything. UFOs to monsters, a funny thing happened on the way to the store, or you can even respond to a story that you've heard here on the RAS. I guess it's time for me to say, please. Thank you for listening to that. Now, let's get to the show. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Audible has sponsored the show now since July of 2019. We have reviewed more than 140 audiobooks, and the list keeps growing. Did you know that Audible has over 200,000 books available? And a lot of those are included in the free catalog. Audible is amazing, and it is the perfect companion to Ron's Amazing Stories. If you like this podcast, you're going to love Audible. So what am I listening to? 101 True Scary Stories to be read in bed tonight by Lane Loomis. Okay, this sounds like the perfect book for the spooky season, and by golly it is. This book contains 101 bite-sized horror stories that are intended to scare and unsettle you. These are real people's accounts of the creepy and the occult, of their near misses with madmen and paranormal entities. Here's a story that was read by narrator Terry Shenebolt.
One night, I was about to go to bed when I realized I left my phone charger in my car.
I had put it in my purse that morning because the one I had at work broke and only just remembered it as I left, placing it on my passenger seat. I needed to charge my phone, and I didn't have a reason to be afraid of the 10 yards from my front door to my car parked in the driveway, but I peeked out the window anyway. I was running on such instinct that my hand was already on the lock, about to flip it and open the door, when my brain registered that what I'd seen wasn't normal. I shifted my weight back and looked again, squinting to see in the dim light by the garage we leave on all the time. I saw a man crouched by the front door holding a hammer. He wouldn't be visible from the little window on the front door. You wouldn't even see him until he was right next to you. I screamed for my husband and watched him book it down the drive. I didn't see him get into a car, but he must have gone somewhere. We called the cops and they couldn't find any sign of him. We invested in some floodlights the next day.
Each chapter is a short, standalone campfire tale, a retelling of a frightening or gruesome incident that has stuck with the teller. Something that gives them pause to this day when they find themselves alone in the dark. Like this one read by Matt Godfrey.
I've heard of things like this happening, but I thought it was an urban legend. In college, I used to go home on the weekends to do laundry and eat free food and hang out with my family and high school friends. I was a night owl, so I'd stay as long as possible and then drive the 3 hours back to school in the middle of the night. This is in Nebraska, so even when it isn't the dead of night, it's easy to find yourself totally alone on the road. One Sunday night, I was driving back to school, and it was around 4 a.m. I wasn't too far out of my small town toward the city yet, and as usual, the roads were completely deserted. Up ahead, I saw what looked like an accident. There was a car pulled halfway off the road onto the shoulder, and I saw a body in the middle of the road. Needless to say, I was extremely creeped out, but I also had these feelings of wanting to stop and help if someone was hurt and needed medical attention. Eventually, my rational side won out, and I decided to drive around the accident and then call 911 after I made it around and was on my way. I'm a small guy, and something about the situation didn't seem right to me, or perhaps I was just too scared to stop and get out of my car in the dark to investigate. I drove on the shoulder on the opposite side of the road, clear from the other car and the body on the road. When I was about 10 yards past the accident, I looked in my rearview mirror, ready to pick up my phone and call the police, when I saw a handful of people coming up from the ditch where they'd been hiding behind the car on the shoulder. The body in the road was now standing up, watching me drive away.
I have one more clip to play for you. It was again read by Matt, and this time leaves a lot to your imagination. What I came up with wasn't pleasant. What do you think?
I was trying to make friends in my new city, so I went to a party a coworker invited me to. I ended up having too much to drink because I was trying to calm my nerves and have fun with strangers. Uber wasn't a thing yet, so I decided I'd just sleep it off in my car and drive home in the morning. I woke up in the dead of the night, and the city's street was so eerie. It had been well populated around bar close when I passed out, but now it was deserted. I could just see by the light of some street lights and the glow of the moon. I wondered for a minute what had woken me up, before I heard a scratching noise on the passenger side rear window. I'll never forget the look on the guy's face who was crouched outside my car, staring at me and trying to get my attention. When he saw me, he grinned and pressed his open mouth against the glass, and then made a chomping motion with his teeth bared and giggled wildly. The worst part was there was nothing I could do.
One thing that has impressed me about this book is the quality of the reads. Both Matt and Terry take turns telling stories, and they really bring them to life. All in all, I highly recommend this collection, and you can have it for free. If that appeals to you, head to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This also gains you access to the included catalog, which is updated constantly with new titles. So to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Thank you, Audible. And now it's time for your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
Our story for today is one that you probably want to leave your lights turned on for. Many times we get stories that are nice, friendly, and even fun. This is not one of those. It takes place on a closed estate that has its very own graveyard. Add to that, the house and grounds have a history of being haunted by ghosts. Where is this place? Well, it's the William Floyd Estate. In September of 1862, the Civil War reached the William Floyd Estate. At that time, the majestic house was the home of John Gleston Floyd Sr. and his wife Sarah. Their fourth child, John G. Floyd Jr., enlisted and joined the Union Army at Staten Island, along with 27 other men from Long Island. John served as a second lieutenant in the 145th New York Volunteer Regiment, Company G. John, unfortunately, was killed in the Battle of Gettysburg. The battle took a heavy toll on the 145th, and the remaining enlisted men were transferred to the 107th, the 123rd, and 150th Infantry. The regiment was discontinued. John's body was returned home at the request of his family. He was buried in the cemetery and is said to walk the grounds looking for his men. On July 16, 1867, John's sister was out riding her horse. She lost control of the animal after being startled by a rabbit. The horse ran headlong into a grove of apple trees. Mary, who was 12 years old, failed to duck and literally lost her head. It's said both headless rider and horse can be heard and seen to this day in that apple grove. Charles McGraney was a convicted killer. He was on his way to prison to be executed for his crimes. He was able to break free and found himself on the grounds of the estate. He thought to enter the main house to take the supplies he needed to get away. What he got was a shotgun blast to the face by John Sr. It is said that he walks the main house looking for revenge against John Sr. There are other stories that I could have related, but I think you get the idea. The William Floyd Estate is one haunted place. Our story today comes from Oliver Robertson, who resides in Brookhaven, New York. John is a ghost hunter, and he sent this in via the website. Hello, Ron. First, thank you for your podcast. Each week I look forward to what you have for me. My favorite is Ghost Stories with Sylvia, followed closely by These Are Your Stories. I've been a ghost hunter for 10 years now, and for the most part it's been pretty calm. That is, until I met up with the William Floyd Estate. A couple of our members have never come back after this one. We had gained special permission to roam the grounds at night. They would not let us enter the main house, but we had access to the graveyard, stable, and cornfields. It was late October, and there was a corn maze that had been set up. That is where we decided to begin our investigation. Mostly because it sounded like fun, and partly because it ended up at the entrance to the graveyard. Very creepy endpoint, don't you think? We had night cameras, audio recorders, and a ghost box with us. 4 of us took on this challenge while the rest of the group headed to the apple orchard. Rumor had it that there was a headless girl there. The path through the maze required that we walk in single file. I was in the lead, followed by Janice, then Anita, and in the rear was Big Mike. We were about 6 minutes in when Big Mike began to squawk.
Something's following us.
I stopped, and sure enough, I could hear the corn stalks behind us rustling. The wind? I asked.
What wind?
Retorted Mike. He was right. There was no breeze at all. I called out, thinking that one of the group had decided to join us. There was no response. I told Anita to start recording, and Big Mike headed back to investigate. We stood silent, listening and waiting. We could hear the racket that Mike was making, but nothing else. It was then that Big Mike let out a scream. It tore through the night like a banshee. He came running back. I shined my flashlight at him, and he was pale. He also had a long scratch on his right cheek. "What happened?" I asked.
It tore into me. It was big, had claws, and looked like some impossible humanoid raven.
He was raving.
"We gotta get out of here."
Well, not that way. Deep down, I wanted to confront whatever it was, but safety made more sense. We continued along the maze, right into a dead end. We would have to head back, after all. Mike was so shaken that I traded places with him and took the lead, heading back. Any thoughts of collecting evidence were long forgotten. We were almost back to the intersection when another scream rocked the cornfield. This time it came behind us and was not human. Decision made. We made our way back to the entrance and were huffing and puffing as we broke out. I turned back to look over the maze. A dark figure, about 6 feet tall, flew out of the cornfield and was heading towards the main house. It was dark, but its form seemed to have some kind of aura surrounding it. I felt chills go through me. We got back to where we had made base camp. We had set up cameras around the estate, and our tech guy was there monitoring them. He had not caught anything that we had seen, but he too had heard the screams. We waited for the rest of the group to arrive and called it a night. We have no evidence to support our claims other than the scratch on Big Mike's face. He and Anita left the group vowing to never go ghost hunting again. What happened? Heck if I know. There is quite a history to this place, but nothing that even suggests of a large humanoid raven that glows. Oliver Robertson, Brookhaven, New York. Well, do we have a new cryptid monster in Brookhaven? I surely don't know. That was one heck of a story, and I have to tell you, it was hard to read. I did do a lot of research on Brookhaven and Long Island in general, and you're right, there's nothing that even hints of what you saw. Long Island's history is filled with unique and bizarre stories, some based on fact, others not so much. From the Amityville horror murders and the Indian princess of Lake Ronkonkoma to alleged mind control experiments and mysterious objects being washed up on its shores. Why not an evil humanoid raven? Thank you, Oliver, for sharing your story. That's it for this time. If you have a story that you want to share like Oliver did, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com. Click on the story submission banner, leave your story, give it a title, and please tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can. Our featured story comes from the Golden Age of Radio. I sent out a request to folks that subscribe to the blog for ideas for tales they wanted to hear during the month of Spooky. This one was suggested by Larry Bursey, who's been a listener of the podcast for a very long time. Gary indicated that this just might be what I was looking for. Soon after, more requests for it came in, and well, I'm going to play it. The House in Cypress Canyon is an episode of the OTR series, Suspense. It was written by Robert L. Richards and directed by William Spear. This episode is constantly cited as one of the most terrifying programs broadcast during radio's golden age. It was originally broadcast December 5th, 1946, and despite its popularity, it only aired once during the show's run. Since the story was presented in December, it was given a Christmas theme. How about that? However, I'm here to tell you that this one should have been played on Halloween. The plot is presented as a story within a story, framed by a meeting between Detective Sam Spade, that's right, the famous detective played by Howard Duff, and a friend. He and his wife have discovered a manuscript regarding a mysterious house. After a brief introduction, the narrative shifts to their story. Now, I'm not going to say any more than that, other than please enjoy The House in Cypress Canyon, a true classic.
And now, Roma Wines, R-O-M-A, Roma Wines present Suspense.
Tonight, Roma Wines bring you Robert Taylor in The House in Cypress Canyon, a suspense play produced, edited, and directed for Roma Wines by William Spear.
Suspense, radio's outstanding theater of thrills, is presented for your enjoyment by Roma Wines. That's R-O-M-A, Roma Wines. Those better-tasting California wines enjoyed by more Americans than any other wine. For friendly entertaining, for delightful dining. Yes, right now, a glassful would be very pleasant, as Roma Wines bring you Robert Taylor, star of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's Undercurrent, in a remarkable tale of suspense.
Merry Christmas, Jerry. How's the real estate business?
Kind of early with your greeting, aren't you, Sam?
Well, I got to get them in sometime. I may not see you again until next Christmas.
If this real estate racket gets any crazy, I'll be dead by next Christmas. I'm glad you could get up here, though, Sam.
What's on your mind, Jerry?
You'll probably shoot me when you hear it, Sam, because I'm probably nuts. But doggone it, you're a detective and you're my pal, and I just had to tell somebody.
Well, you sound like it's serious.
That's just it. I don't know what it is, Sam, but... Now, listen, You know, we're agents for a group of houses up in Cypress Canyon. Mm-hmm. Those places that were started before the war, never got finished.
Oh, yeah.
All I got in were the foundations, just concrete and a couple of beams. Well, they've been finished now. In fact, I'm putting up the for rent on the last of them today.
Well, what do you want? Police protection from the mob?
Listen, Sam, this house that I'm talking about, it's got a number now, 2256. But before, when the men went back to work on it about 3 months ago, well, they just started when the foreman on the job brought me a shoebox that he'd found up on a beam. And this box had a manuscript in it, a story kind of, all written out.
Yeah.
Well, he gave me the thing. I read it. I didn't think much about it. I put it in my desk. But the other day, and I happened to drive by there, I saw the number on the house and what the house looked like. I thought of this manuscript. And, well, I don't like it. That's all. There's something funny about it.
What's funny about it?
Well, mind you, this thing was found in an unfinished house in Cypress Canyon. House that was only just started building.
All right.
Well, listen, Sam, I want to read it to you if you got the time, and you'll see what I mean.
All right, shoot.
Well, here's how it begins. To whom it may concern, my reasons for setting down on paper what follows here will be abundantly
clear to anyone into whose possession it may fall. First, let me say that I'm a very ordinary person. My name is James A. Woods. I'm 35 years old. By profession, a chemical engineer. My wife, Ellen, was a school teacher when I met and married her in Indiana 7 years ago. There's nothing in the past life of either one of us to suggest remotely any cause or reason for the dreadful thing that has invaded our lives. Our married life has been in no way different from that of millions of other average, reasonably happy, and congenial families. 3 months ago, I was ordered by my firm to take charge of a rather minor project in Los Angeles, Hollywood to be exact. The order was a sudden one. There'd been no time to secure accommodations, and conditions being what they are, the inevitable result was that until day before yesterday, we'd been living in the cramped quarters of one of those characteristic California motels. Needless to say, most of our spare time had been devoted to a search for something more permanent and comfortable, but the fruits of these efforts had been, financially and in every other way, a geometrical progression of discouragement. Until last Saturday afternoon, only 4 days before Christmas. We were driving into town on our way to a movie when Ellen saw it.
Jim, look.
What?
That sign in front of that real estate office.
Oh, yeah.
But don't you see what it says? For rent, furnished, 2-bedroom house, close in, immediate occupancy.
Yeah,
Aren't you going to stop?
Oh, Ellen, you know what a sign like that. It'd mean right out in plain sight in front of a real estate office.
Oh, yeah, but Jim...
Either they want $600 a month...
We'll never know until we
Well,
ask.
if it's any good at all, there are probably 50 people fighting for it right back there now.
Well, honey, there's no harm in trying now, is there?
You really want to go back?
Oh, it's probably foolish, but what can we lose?
Okay.
Oh, darling, come on, cheer up. How do you know? Maybe our luck's changed. Maybe fate's going to give us a nice new house for a Christmas present.
Come in.
Oh, we're sorry to bother you, but we just happened to see that for rent sign outside.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I hung it outside just this minute.
Is the house available?
Why, sure it is.
Let me introduce myself. My name is James A. Woods, and this is my wife, Ellen.
How to do? Wow. Looks like it's fixing to rain.
Yes, so it does, doesn't it? Well, it was one of those things. The real estate agent had just been authorized to rent the place by mail that morning, and he'd hardly had time to look at it himself and put up his sign when we drove up. It was just an ordinary little California house about halfway up Cypress Canyon, number 2256. Just an ordinary, undistinguished little house. The agent didn't know much about it. Construction on it had been stopped by the war, and it had just been completed and furnished lately. Been vacant while somebody's estate was being settled, and now it was owned by a bank in Sacramento. Of course, we didn't
Got
care
this
about
key
all
in the
that.
mail along with the authorization to rent. Only one there is, because you can have duplicates made. Yeah, seems to stick a little. No, there it is.
Doesn't sound as though that door had ever been opened.
Well, a little oil on the hinges will fix that all right.
Oh, sure.
Now here's your living room. Furniture's a little dusty, of course. You got to expect that. It's good furniture, though, you see? Benson Brothers.
Yes,
Now, over here's a little den. Paneled, you see? Radio, fireplace. Really a very attractive little room, particularly for a man.
Yep.
Now, the bedroom's off the living room here. Everything's all on one floor, you understand? It's quite nice, I think.
Yes.
You can see you get the morning sun here. There's a view of the canyon through these front windows. You got cross ventilation.
That's about all there was to it. It wasn't the best place in the world. It was small and badly built, but what would you have done? We took it with as little inspection as that. It was the Saturday before Christmas. And the very same evening, we were struggling up the steps from the road with suitcases and boxes and armloads of clothes and all the endless bric-a-brac that people collect and never know they have until they move. Ellen began unpacking, and I began moving things around and taking the worst of the pictures off the wall, doing all the little things that everybody does when they move into a new place and try to give it something of their own
Don't be
personality.
such a sourpuss. You know, it's a roof over our heads for Christmas. That's more than we ever thought we'd get, isn't it? Now, what in the world are we going to do with those 2 pictures?
Why don't we just leave them where they are?
Jim, we can't. They're too awful.
Well, all right, put them in the closet then.
I can't. Both the closets are jammed full.
No, I mean the other one in the little alcove off the den. At least there's a door there. I suppose it's a closet. I don't know.
If that isn't a commentary on the housing problem, huh? A woman moving into a house without even knowing where all the closets are. Take the pictures down, will you, honey? Bring them in here.
Okay.
Guess you'll have to help me with this door. I can't get it open.
Let me see it. Well, of course you can't, silly. It's locked. Where are those keys we found on the desk?
Here they are.
Nope. Not this one. Sure this one won't work. Nope. Feels like an awful solid door for a closet.
Oh, and that's one solid door in the house.
Nope, this one won't do it either. Well, we'll just have to get a locksmith up here on Monday. I'll put the pictures behind the desk, okay?
Yeah, all right. Jim, if you could just help me move this armchair, huh?
Oh, Ellen, will you let it go until tomorrow? You know what time it is?
Oh, but, honey, I'd like to get the place looking just a little
but it's
bit...
almost midnight. In fact, it's exactly...
What was that?
Tomcat, I guess, out in the brush somewhere.
Sounded near. Oh, hope that doesn't go on all night.
Well, there's much we can do about it. Come on, Ellen, I'm dead tired.
All right, Jim, all right.
Where'd you put the toothpaste, honey?
It's right in the medicine cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
Jim, we ought to get some firewood tomorrow. You know, a fire in that living room would make all the difference in the world.
Can't. Sunday.
Well, Monday, then. Jim, I think red curtains are what we need, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, just at least for the living room. Anyway, the ones in there now have just got to come down.
Yeah, I suppose they do.
What do you think of red?
Well, I guess it's all...
Jim.
It's some tomcat.
Jim, it sounded in the house.
Oh, now, how could it be in the house, Ellen? We've been over every inch of the house.
Except that closet.
Now, how could a cat or anything else be in a closet that's been locked up for over a year?
I don't know.
It's probably under the house. A wildcat or mountain lion or something. I hear they have them in California.
Jim, I don't like
Well,
it.
neither do I like it, but there's nothing we can do about it tonight.
Well, maybe we ought to call somebody, the police or some
don't
neighbors.
be silly, Ellen. You act like a kid. Come on, let's go to bed, huh?
Well, all right, I suppose it is silly. Jimmy, did you lock the door?
Yeah. Can I turn out the lights now?
Yeah. All right.
Good night, Ellen. Sleep tight.
Good night, Jim.
I don't know what time it was, perhaps an hour, perhaps only a half hour later. My mind was in that hazy borderland between sleep and a dream that's still part of consciousness. Then I was awake. Ellen, are you all right?
Yes.
Did you have a nightmare or something?
No. I heard it, too.
Well, that didn't sound like any cat.
Put on the light.
Yeah.
It seemed to be out there, Jim, in the house somewhere.
I'm going to look into this.
Jim, you be careful.
Come on. Where's my shotgun?
In the den, I think. Jim.
What?
There's something wet.
What? Wet?
Running from under the closet door. Sticky.
Ellen, don't touch it.
I had to. Jim, it's blood.
For Suspense, Roma Wines are bringing you Robert Taylor in the house in Cypress Canyon. Roma Wines' presentation tonight in radio's outstanding theater of thrills, Suspense.
Between the acts of Suspense, this is Ken Niles for Roma Wines. These days before Christmas are busy ones indeed, yet smart hostesses everywhere find time for shopping and distinguished home entertaining later. The secret? Magnificent Grand Estate Wines. Presented by Roma, America's greatest vintner, Grand Estate Wines add distinction to your hospitality on a moment's notice. Make your holiday welcome, effortless, and in perfect taste. The brilliant clarity, full fragrance, and mellow taste of Grand Estate Wines please discriminating people everywhere. For Grand Estate Wines, limited bottlings by Roma, are born of choicest grapes, then patiently guided to superb taste richness by Roma vintner skill, necessary time, and America's finest winemaking resources. Delight your guests with Grand Estate California wines. For entertaining, medium sherry, ruby port, or golden muscatel. For dining, Burgundy or Sauterne. So insist on Grand Estate Wines and enjoy the crowning achievement of vintner skill.
And now, Roma Wines bring back to our Hollywood soundstage Robert Taylor as James A. Woods, with Kathy Lewis as his wife Ellen, in The House in Cypress Canyon, a tale well calculated to keep you in suspense.
It cannot be too difficult to understand from the foregoing why I've taken the pains to set down in writing the events related here. To find in one's newly rented house a closet which cannot be opened is in itself certainly no great cause for alarm. But to be awakened in the stillness of the night by unearthly cries within that house, to find oozing from under that closet door something that is unquestionably blood, that's another matter. Perhaps others might have been braver than we. Suffice it only to say that we got out of the house in something very close to a panic, and only returned when we had the moral support of two stalwart Los Angeles policemen.
You just moved in here, you say?
That's right, officer. You can see we're still unpacking.
And the place has been empty right along before that?
Yeah, I don't know much about that part of it. You could check all that with the real estate agent, though.
Well, where is this closet?
Oh, it's right in here, officer. And the blood is...
Where? Where's the blood?
Jim?
Officer, I swear to you, there was blood on the floor less than an hour ago. I saw it.
Uh-huh.
It was running out from under that door. We heard that noise, and we got up, and then we saw it. The door was locked.
Locked, huh?
Oh, no,
Well, it seems to be all right now.
Hey, you folks aren't trying to be funny, are you?
Isn't there anything in it?
No, ma'am, there is not.
Look, officer, we're reputable people. You can call my firm. They'll tell you all about me.
There's nothing wrong with this closet. Walls are solid. No trapdoors.
If you think I'm lying...
I didn't say that, mister. Oh, you probably did hear some sort of a noise, and you got a little panicky, and...
What about the blood? It got on my hand.
It isn't there now, is it?
Yes.
Where?
I feel it.
Now, you folks just take it easy. You know, you're liable to hear all kinds of noises up in these canyons at night. You're from the east, you say?
Yeah. I'm sorry, officer.
Ah, that's all right. That's all right. If you have any real trouble, call on us anytime.
All right.
Well, good night.
Good night.
Good night. Hey, you ought to have this door fixed. That's enough to scare you.
Yeah, we're going to have it fixed. We didn't say much about it after that. There wasn't much that could be said. The next day, I went down to a lot and bought a little Christmas tree and some trimmings, and we tried to pretend we were cheerful, but there was an uneasiness between us that had never been there before. Ellen seemed tired and listless. Several times during the day, I noticed her washing her hands with a brush, scrubbing the one that had touched the blood. That night, we each took a sleeping pill and went to bed. It was sometime after midnight when I was suddenly wide awake and staring into the darkness. In some way, I knew at once and instinctively what had awakened me. Ellen was not in her bed nor in the room. The nameless thing I feared gripped at my heart until I could scarcely breathe. I opened the bedroom door and started through the house, putting on every light that I could find. There was not much to search, but I searched thoroughly. The living room, the kitchen, bathroom, den, even the garage. And all the time, the dread of looking where I knew at last I must look. For I think I knew from the very first time where I'd find her. It must have been a full minute that I stood before that closet door. Then, I opened it. She stood there rigid, her arms at her sides, her fingers extended like claws. Her hair was over her face, her eyes stared out of it. Her lips were drawn back in a grin like an animal at bay. For a moment, I was frozen with the horror of it. I stretched out my hand. Very deliberately, she turned her head and sunk her teeth until they met into the flesh of my forearm. I'd raised my hand to strike at her, but already she'd relaxed her hold and gone utterly limp. She would have fallen unless I'd caught her. I carried her into the bedroom and laid her on the bed. Strangely, at that moment, my only thought was how I might revive her. until I saw that it was not a faint, but a sleep that she'd fallen into. Sleep as deep and heavy as though she'd been drugged. And so I left her. But for me, that night, there was no sleep.
Jim?
Yes, Ellen?
What are you doing up so early?
Oh, I got a little restless. I'd make some coffee.
Oh. Oh. I had the most wonderful sleep. And I feel so rested.
Do you?
Mm-hmm. Jim.
What?
What's the matter with your arm?
Oh, I just heard it.
Why, honey, it's terribly swollen. Let me see it.
No, it's all right, Ellen.
Oh, it isn't all right. You've got to see Dr. Wesley right away.
Sure, I will.
No,
I
now
will.
you promise me, Jim, that you'll go the first thing this morning. How'd it happen?
Oh, there was a dog.
A dog?
Yeah, I heard him trying to chew through the screen door. I went out to chase him away, and he bit me.
Well, you mean there's all that racket and I didn't even wake up?
No, Ellen, you didn't even wake up. It was clear to me that Ellen knew nothing of what had transpired the night before. I went to my office that morning and made a pretense of going over routine business, if only to restore my mind to some semblance of calm by the sight and sound of common, familiar things. Pain in my arm had become a persistent, dull throbbing. I made a late appointment with Dr. Wesley. He treated my arm with something of an arched eyebrow, and he said,
"Well, I've never seen anything quite like it before. That is such a rapid onset of infection."
It was dark when I left his office. I hadn't realized it was so late. Driving home, my car seemed sluggish until I saw the needle on the dashboard and realized that I was pushing it to the utmost of its speed. I was racing home to prevent something before it was too late, before the darkness had conspired against me. For somehow I already knew with certainty that it was the darkness and the night that I had to fear. The curves of the canyon seemed endless. And then the cold fear leaped up inside me. My house, too, was dark. I went slowly up the stone steps from the road, looking, praying for some sign of light or life. There was none. The house was empty. Ellen was gone. I looked with the same self-torturing thoroughness, and in that closet first of all, knowing as I did so that it was hopeless. And so, alone in that empty house, I waited, powerless and helpless now, deadened in thought and will, empty as the house itself, save only for the overwhelming sense of a terrible foreboding. For some time in the early hours of the morning, I snapped on the radio, shortwave. Why? Surely a minor question now. I only know that I did. And then I heard it.
Car 58, car 58, go to Laurel Canyon, the 4000 block. A report that a man has been injured or attacked. Condition thought to be critical. Ambulance will follow. That is all.
I was there almost before the police, edging my way through the little crowd, staring down at the man lying there in his white uniform under the streetlight.
Yeah, the milkman, poor guy.
I heard him scream, but when I got here, he was just like this. There's nothing around at all.
Stand back, stand back. Please stand back.
Well, you again.
I heard it on the radio. I lived just down the road.
Yeah, I remember.
What happened?
Well, take a look. Maybe you can tell us.
He was dead. And he was lying on his back. And his throat had been torn out, as though by the fangs of some wild animal. It is now Christmas Eve, or rather Christmas morning, for it's a little after midnight. I've been waiting here in the stillness of this empty house for nearly 24 hours, waiting for the end. Already once tonight I've heard that dreadful wailing cry somewhere in the hills. I've nailed up the closet door, but that I know is childish and useless. My arm is horribly swollen and turning black, but that's nothing. It's another end that I foresee, as surely as other men foresee the rising of the sun. I hear the cry again. It's nearer now. I shall leave these notes in a sealed envelope and put it in a shoebox, in the hope that someone will give credence to these dark and terrible events, if indeed such nameless horrors can ever yield to mortal understanding. As for myself, I feel no longer any fear or even sorrow. Only a desire that the end and the thing that I must do may come soon. And it will be soon, I know. Yes, for there is someone at the door.
Someone at the door. Huh. What do you make of it, Sam?
It's quite a yarn. But what of it?
That's what I thought. Now, listen, that's not quite all of it. Huh? Clip to it's a newspaper clipping. Listen. Hollywood, December the 26th. Police reported what was apparently a case of murder and suicide in Cypress Canyon sometime in the early hours of the morning. The victims were James A. Woods, a chemical engineer, and his wife, Ellen. Preliminary investigation indicates that Mrs. Woods was killed by the blast of a shotgun in the hands of her husband, who then turned the weapon upon himself. That she fought desperately for her life, however, was evidenced by the disorder of the room and the severe lacerations inflicted upon her husband about the neck and arms. This is the second tragedy to be reported in Cypress Canyon within 24 hours, the other being the unexplained death of Frank Polanski, a milkman.
Well, no such murders or whatever they were ever occurred, if that's what's worrying you. The clipping, well, you have those things printed up, you know.
No, it's not that, Sam. That story was found in an unfinished house in Cypress Canyon. No number, no nothing, just a framework.
Uh-huh.
Now that house is finished. When I drove by it today, but that's what stopped me, Sam, because it all fits. Now that it's finished, it is the house in the story, the same construction, the same vines and creepers on the lawn, even the same number.
So what, a guy who knows roughly what this house is going to be like writes a yarn and loses it or something?
Did he know the place was going to be listed for rental today, the Saturday before Christmas?
Oh, Jerry, coincidence. Two bits you find the guy next door is a ghost story writer or something, and he's been wondering for a year what happened to that thing he wrote.
Okay, coincidence. Well, I'm sorry I bothered you, Sam.
Don't be silly. I liked it. It's a good yarn. That the for rent sign you were talking about?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to put it up outside now.
Uh-huh. Well, so long, Jerry, and Merry Christmas again.
Yeah, well, thanks, Sam. I guess I was kind of silly, all right. Huh?
Listen, when a guy named, whatever it is, Woods, with a wife named Ellen comes in to rent that place from you, then you can start worrying.
Yeah. Well, so long, Sam.
So long, Jerry.
Come in.
Oh, we're sorry to bother you, but we just happened to see that for rent sign outside.
Well, yeah, I hung it out just this minute.
Is the house available?
Oh, sure it is.
Well, let me introduce myself. My name is James A. Woods, and this is my wife, Ellen.
How do? Wow. Looks like it's fixing to...
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Suspense.
Presented by Roma Wines, R-O-M-A, Roma Wines, selected for your pleasure from the world's greatest reserves of fine wines. Tonight's show marks the third birthday of Suspense on the air, and this is Ken Niles asking our star of the evening, Robert Taylor, to help us celebrate.
Why didn't you tell me before, Ken? If I'd only known, I'd have baked a cake.
Well, Bob, all Suspense parties are surprise parties. As an old hand on Suspense, you know that in our plays, the tables are usually turned on the star. So tonight, although it's our birthday, we're going to give you a present. Here it is, a gift basket of Grand Estate California wines from Roma, America's greatest vintner, to our distinguished anniversary guest, Robert Taylor.
Thanks, Ken. You turn a nice table.
And you can set a nice table with Grand Estate Burgundy in your basket, Bob. For Grand Estate Burgundy means rare dining pleasure, adds memorable distinction to holiday dinner. Even everyday meals are outstanding in taste when Grand Estate Burgundy is served. Yes, all Grand Estate wines presented by Roma are limited bottlings of outstanding taste excellence.
That I know about Grand Estate wines, Ken.
But did you know that for Grand Estate wines, Roma selects only the choicest grapes? Then the ancient skill of Roma master vintners, necessary time, and America's finest winemaking resources guide the cuvée of this grape treasure to rich taste luxury. That's why discriminating wine users everywhere look to Grand Estate wines as the crowning achievement of vintner skill.
Reason enough. And now, Ken, who's all set to star on Suspense next Thursday?
It's that very wonderful actress and wonderful girl, Miss Susan Peters. Susan will appear as a young lady in straitened circumstances who finds herself mistaken for a very rich young lady and who is forced into continuing the deception with murder as a result.
I'll certainly make it a point to listen. And before I go, I'd like to thank this really great company of actors who have played with me tonight, and particularly Kathy Lewis, who played Ellen.
Thank you, Bob.
Tonight's original suspense play was written by Robert L. Richards. Next Thursday, same time, you will hear Miss Susan Peters as star of Suspense.
Produced by William Spear for the Roma Wine Company of Fresno, California. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
That is a chilling story of the supernatural with werewolves, screams in the night, and impossible happenings. Truly one of the great ones of old-time radio. This is the third time that we have played the house in Cypress Canyon, and it probably won't be the last. When people discuss the greatest episodes of Suspense, invariably this one comes up. And for good reason. It's an unnerving slice of horror, in large part because there's no explanation ever given, and the whole story seems to be a Mobius loop of sorts. Now, we've talked about those in episode number 550, so it's not surprising that folks would request it. Before the Blair Witch movie and other lost footage horror stories was The House of Cypress Canyon. However, this radio episode of Suspense is the grandfather of them all. I want to thank Larry Bursey and all of you that suggested it. That was episode number 562, and I want to thank Oliver Robertson and Larry Bursey for taking part. If all goes well, next week, Sylvia and I will be presenting an MST 3000 version of The Thing on the Forble Board. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.